County Board of Commissioners will come to order. As a first matter of business, I'd like to call on Commissioner Linda Shook, who will lead us in an invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. If you'll join us, please.
Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, as we meet this afternoon to conduct the county's business, we give thanks for all the many blessings that you have bestowed upon us, our friends, our families, our neighborhoods. We give thanks especially that we live in a country where we are free to choose our leaders who are accountable to its citizens. As we conduct our business today, we pray that you will give us wisdom and insight, and that the actions that we take are pleasing in your eye. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice to have you here with us today. First, we're going to honor our Employee of the Month, and to do that, I'd like to call on Lavelle McLean to make a presentation. Mrs. McLean.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, the Employee of the Month Selection Committee has selected Terry Johnson of the Lee County Department of General Services as Lee County's Employee of the Month for March 2009. Terry has been employed with Lee County since 1982 and currently serves as General Services Administrator. One of Terry's greatest strengths is her ability to be flexible and versatile. She came to General Services in 2005 and has been a huge asset to the department. As Terry adjusted to her new duties, she brought skills that have been a resource to others. Terry's pleasant, positive attitude shows with her coworkers and with the public. She motivates by her attitude and her willingness. She's always helpful and handles everything and everyone in a professional manner. Terry always accents the positive, and coworkers always know their opinions and suggestions matter. Taking each and every task with a positive, open-minded attitude shows her dedication to her job and to Lee County. Terry and her husband Randy are presently helping plan their daughter Amanda's October wedding. Based on the recommendation and her service and commitment to Lee County, the committee felt that Terry should be awarded Employee of the Month. Therefore, the committee respectfully asks that you join us in awarding Terry Johnson Employee of the Month for March 2009.
Mrs. Johnson, would you like to say something to us?
I was just going to say thank you, and this really means a lot to me.
Okay, now you have to come forward, and we have some nice awards for your honor. First, one large 2-topping pizza, Papa John's, and 2 free 2-liter drinks from Papa John's to go with the pizzas. 1 free movie rental from Movie Gallery. 1 day off with pay. I'm sure you will be delighted to have that to take care of those nice presents. We have a certificate which speaks to your award and the honor you bring upon us. March 2009, Lee County government recognizes Terry Johnson for going above and beyond regular duties to be an outstanding employee. And I'd like to give you that. And then finally, this Star Award, which is really beautiful. And we hope you will take this and appreciate and know how much we appreciate what you're doing for Lee County. And I'd like to take your hand and shake it and thank you again. And I know that the commissioners would like to thank you as well. Okay, fellow commissioners, is there anything that you would wish to add to the agenda at this time?
Item, I'd like to add the February 24th letter from William Willis on the 911 issue.
We will make that item D under new business letter from Mr. Willis. And that's on regarding 9/11, right, Mr. Reed?
The 911 system.
911, yeah, okay. All right, very good. And, are there any other changes to the agenda? And if not, do I have a motion that we approve the agenda as moved?
So moved.
Okay, all in favor? Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The agenda is approved as amended. Now, under the approval of the consent agenda, is there any action that should be taken there, or shall we move to approve it?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we pull item C, the application for ADM funds, just to discuss what maybe our challenges are since the General Assembly has, decided not to distribute some of those. So, we can just pull that for discussion purposes.
Okay, we'll pull that and we'll call that E after the other amendment that we've made to put that under new business as item E. And we'll strike it from the approval agenda. Now, are we prepared to approve the consent agenda? If there are no, so moved. Any further discussion of that? All in favor of the consent agenda as approved or as amended, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the consent agenda is approved. Under old business, resolution opposing Employee Free Choice Act. Linda.
Are we going to do the public comments?
I'm sorry, I beg your pardon. I got right out ahead of myself there. No, we have, beg your pardon, let me back up. We have quite a number of individuals who have signed up for public comment, and we will probably, it looks like, this could be 20, 25 minutes worth, up to 30, but I would remind each speaker that in the public comment section, this is 3 minutes per speaker, and we will watch that carefully due to the number of speakers that we have today. And I will try to pronounce your name correctly, and forgive me if I don't, but I'll do my best. First, and again, Mr. Hoyle will keep the time and will allow us to know when 3 minutes have elapsed. Mr. Robbie Stone, if you would come forward and make your presentation, Mr. Stone.
Board. I've been asked on behalf of the fire service and all emergency services in Lee County to speak here today regarding the 911 issues. We're aware that officials of Lee County have been working hard to negotiate a contract with the city of Sanford for the 911 communication services. During negotiations, the city officials have indicated to county officials that there have been no issues with the 911 communications. There have been no complaints regarding the service provided by the city. True, there have been very few, if any, complaints from 8 volunteer fire departments. Previous attempts to address issues pertaining to the 911 communication center operated by the city fell to deaf ears. So over the past few years, the county's volunteer fire departments quit complaining since there was no system in place to address their grievances. All stakeholders who provide emergency services should support the county's efforts to work with the city to negotiate a contract for a 911 communication center. It is imperative that there be a system of oversight of the 911 communication center that would ensure that all providers of emergency services to the citizens of Lee County, the cities of Sanford, and the town of Broadway have an opportunity to participate. The providers of emergency services in the county, the city, and the town have a long reputation of working together to serve our fellow citizens during their time of need. Lee County Fire Chiefs Council strongly encourages the county commissioners of the city of Sanford, council members, to come together and create a contract with 911 Communications Center that benefits all citizens of Lee County, regardless where they reside. That's it.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from Mr. Griffin, Mr. Harry Griffin.
Mr. Chairman.
Good afternoon.
I am here to speak on behalf of Ms. Shook's proposal to oppose the Employee Free Choice Act. I have worked for 40-plus years in both union and non-union facilities, and I appreciate the fact that the ability to vote on a secret ballot is something that is valued in the United States, and do not support the need for a card signing. The reason I do not support the card signing is the fact that the activities of individuals on a one-to-one basis can be coercive and oppose the opportunity for a free choice. Based upon, I would support Ms. Shook's recommendations.
Thank you very much. Next, Mr. Russell Noel.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, remember, I'm a little hard of hearing, all right? I don't know how many people or individuals in this room have had personal involvement with labor unions and their campaigns. As a department manager for a very large manufacturing corporation, several years ago, I have twice. Under the laws then, the union campaigns were disruptive, vicious, and an impediment to productivity. Under the newly approved U.S. House legislation, it will become even worse. Labor union officials have only one goal in mind: organize, collect their members' dues, and pad their coffers with cash. Unions usually direct their efforts toward the workers who are slackers, however, want their undue job security protected. Labor union organizations are extremely good at twisting the truth. I do agree that in the late 1800s and early 1900s, there were need for unions because there were sweatshops who took advantage of unskilled labor. However, since that time, American industry and skills have made great strides and have come a long way. And the need for these union parasites has long since passed, people. Now let me briefly touch on what I believe the labor unions have done for the American industries and the economy in the last 30-plus years. Example number one. Through their contracts, they often have mandated 2+ workers to perform the work that can efficiently be done by one worker. Thereby, they have forced companies in this country to outsource work to foreign countries, jobs that should have been retained here in the United States of America. Example two.
Mr. Noel, your time has ended. Please wrap it up right
Okay.
now. Thank you.
I guess some people may wonder why we have such a high rate of unemployment and economic collapse. The answer is relatively simple. Greedy and corrupt union officials, greedy and corrupt politicians who accept donations from number one above and in return for legislative favors.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Noel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Put a copy in the record.
Sure. The next speaker is Mrs. Tammy Roush. Would you come forward, please?
Hi. First of all, I want to thank our Lee County Commissioners for representing the people of Lee County. I'm a resident and a small business owner, and I also oppose the Free Choice Act. The mere name of the bill is kind of a facade to the people. It's like a waterfall in the desert. If they really don't understand that whole name angers me a little bit, the Free Choice Act. I mean, we already have a free choice whether to work for one company or work for another company and accept their benefits and their way of doing business, or start your own business. In my opinion, our government is either totally out of touch with Americans or on the take once more. I sure hope nobody here is. This time the unions are paying out. 85% of us Americans are either small business owners or work for small business, and none can afford to think about shelling out union dues or adding to the cost of doing business in these economic times. As for the 15%, the large corporate businesses and those employees, we see how unions have cast them back into bankruptcy or replaced people with machines, even your self-little checkout registers, or the examples of manufacturing and customer services just simply leaving our country altogether. That's stopping contributing to our economy and to our tax base, and it's leaving behind unemployment and recession. For a fact, the states that have 20% or more unionized personnel working, they also have 1.2% higher unemployment, and 60% of the unemployment increase happens in those states. Even a small company like ours is burdened by thousands of dollars and thousands of man hours each year just trying to deal with all the regulations, taxes, hidden taxes, documents upon documents for employees, customers, and the business. A stifling burden on the backs of what over the last 4 years has certainly been contributing to companies' losses. How can businesses have employees bargaining for higher wages and more benefits when they themselves are at losses? This is a bogus Free Choice Act. If it passes, the people who are passing it are definitely on the take. I mean, we've got right here, taking away the secret ballot. That's just one way of pressuring and coercing people into doing what they want as an agenda. They've been known to go to people's houses and call their phones and to get those phone numbers and addresses by legal means to coerce them into being in the union. Everyone in America already has a real freedom of choice. Choose what you will work for and who you will work for. Are the unions different from the mafia? The mafia forced storekeepers to pay for safety. The unions force workers to pay to keep their jobs.
Thank you very much. Your time's up. Please let me ask again if all of you would be sensitive to the time limit so that we can get through them all. Everything that's been said is very much appreciated, but we really have to watch the 3-minute limit, so bear with us. Mr. Eugene Barufkin.
Hi, thank you. I'm always impressed by Linda Shook. She has always said she does her homework. But as was printed in the Sanford Herald and her resolution, I think she's missing quite a few points. 75% of companies who are going through union organization actually hire union busters to help them break it up. 75%. 78% force employees to attend a one-on-one meeting against the union and their supervisors. They bring professionals in, trained people, to try to break it up, even in closed-door sessions. 92% of the businesses force employees to attend mandatory closed-door meetings against the union. 25% illegally fire at least one worker for union activity during organizing campaigns. That's not very democratic. 51% threaten to close the plant if the union wins the election. In actuality, only 1% of plants where union organizing has taken place were actually closed because of this. 46% of workers during an NLRB supervised union election report employer lawlessness both before and during the election. 36% of workers who vote against union representation describe their decision as a response to employer pressure, according to a survey of 400 NLRB election campaigns from 1998 to 1999, just a short period. It's interesting to compare Costco with Walmart. The average salary at Costco is $16 an hour, and they're unionized. The average salary at Walmart is about $10 an hour. The Costco employees only pay 8% of their salary towards health care insurance. Walmart, if most employees can't afford what Walmart offers them. Costco, profits at Costco are 25% higher than Sam's Club's. That's interesting, isn't it? They're unionized, Sam's Clubs are not. Costco employees sell 50% more per square foot of sales space than their rival Sam's Club. In other words, the employees must be happier. The FCC, this is very interesting, the FCC fined CBS $550,000 for Janet Jackson's wardrobe malfunction at the Super Bowl. The NLRB cannot fine, has no statutory standing to fine an employer for threatening, assaulting, or firing non-union employees. And as I mentioned at the end of the last meeting, what unions have been trying to do is to get people at least up to a living wage. Ms. Shook, almost every meeting, brings in a supermarket receipt and talks about food stamps. People would not need food stamps if they could earn a living wage. People would not need, especially single parents, would not need child care subsidies if they could get a living wage. People would not need housing subsidies if they could earn a living wage. These are all things that the unions fight for, and the hypocrisy of it is you don't want to give the other part. So yes, taxes do have to make up the difference between a living wage and what people really need to live. Thank you. And I hope the board votes against this. I really don't like to see the county commissioners in Lee County being used as a political stump, which is what's happened.
Thank you, Mr. Borofkin. Next, Mr. Will Cubison.
Thank you. My name, again, Will Cubison. I'm from the Young Democrats in North Carolina. And Mr. Borofkin laid out a large number of the statistics behind this. The intimidation that many workers face in the workplace. One small thing he left out is, in a recent survey, 79% of workers said that they feel that if they get involved with the union, they're likely to be fired. 5% of workers, only 5%, 1/16 said that they would be pressured if a union organizer asked them to sign a card. But I don't want to get into the specifics of statistics and all of this stuff. What I really want to talk to you about is the very nature of this bill, which is that it preserves the secret ballot. Under current law, the employer is given an option when employees want to unionize. The NLRB comes to the employer and says, do you want a secret ballot, so-called secret ballot, or do you want a majority sign-up? Currently, since the 1930s, just around 25% of workplaces have been unionized without a secret ballot. So this is no new thing, this is no new creation. This bill simply gives the option to the employees. Do we want to sign up for a union, or do we want to have an election? Instead of giving it to the employer, it gives it to the employees who are seeking a voice in the workplace. Now, I won't go into all these statistics about intimidation and all this stuff and things that Mr. Bruff can just barely even hint at, barely scratch the surface on. What I will say is that this comes down to one thing and one thing only. Who do you represent? You're here to represent the citizens of this district, the citizens of this county, the people, the small business owners, the small business workers, the big business workers. You're not sent here to represent people like Walmart. You're not sent here to represent people like Sheldon Adelson, the Las Vegas casino owner who spent $30 million in 2008 opposing union-friendly political campaigns. You're sent here to represent the people of Lee County, and I hope that you'll vote in their best interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Covison. The next speaker is Melvin Montford. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to speak before you today, and I'll stay within the time limits if just let me know when it gets close. I'm a business representative for the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers. I've been a union member since 1971, and I'm a resident of North Carolina and proud to be. I've looked at your resolution on the Employee Free Choice Act, and I'm really concerned about some of the things that it alleges. And I'll try not to cover what everybody else has covered. But the act simply does not, as was just said, take away a person's right to a secret ballot. It puts that decision in the hands of employees where it should be. In your resolution, it talks about employees being required to pay union dues. In this state, that's not true. This is a right to work state, and an employee cannot be compelled to pay union dues, even if the plant becomes organized. And as I've said, it does not remove the secret ballot. I've been a full-time representative for the union since 1988. I've been involved in a lot of organizing campaigns. I've seen the intimidation and harassment that companies put on employees in that 42 days from the time they file to the time they have an election. And I think it's a shame in this country when an American citizen can be so afraid to say the word union in a plant or vote their conscience because of the intimidation and harassment that they receive from companies. But it's not all companies. Most of the companies that we deal with are fair. But there are some where we need to level the playing field and make it fair for all our citizens. I also represent a lot of small businesses. We represent probably more auto mechanics than any union in America. And a lot of them have union contracts, and a lot of them are small, 9 and 10 employees. And we have very good relationships with those companies. We initiate apprenticeship programs. We have high performance work organizations where we come in and we go through the whole company and we help the company be more profitable. I'm not going to call their names, but we represent some of the most profitable companies in America. And it's because of the joint relationship between the union representing employees and the company. I've been in negotiations where the company drug it out for 2.5 and 3 years. And under the act, it would just make it fair. And it would certainly save that company some money, knowing that at the end, that once you've gone through give and take negotiations, that somebody else can come in and say, hey, let's do this until your next contract negotiations. So I think that would save businesses some money, not cause them more money. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Montford. The next speaker is Mr. Dallas Woodhouse.
Hi. Thank you. My name is Dallas Woodhouse, and I am the State Director of Americans for Prosperity. I represent people like Lloyd Jennings, our chapter chair here in Lee County. I come here today to speak in favor of the resolution. We are firmly against the incredibly misnamed bill, and I'll refer to it as the card check bill. I want to be real clear about something. You're hearing from the union people that this does not get rid of a secret ballot. Let me be very clear on this. Currently, it is an individual right to a secret ballot. an individual right. Under this bill, it is no longer an individual's right. At best, it is there a collective right. That means that Jamie, Robert, and John can vote to take their right to an individual ballot away. Whether it's up to the workers or not, it allows one group of workers to decide for the others that they can have a secret ballot. One of the people that signed up on the list to speak here today was on television this weekend referring to himself as a civil rights leader, and he may be. But I wonder what other civil rights, what other fundamental individual civil rights are we willing to allow to be voted by one group of people by another? Do we allow one group to vote to bring back the poll tax? Do we allow one group to vote to make public elections and signing cards the way we elect county commissioners and president? I think not. I mean, we are taking away an individual's personal right and giving it to other people to decide whether they can have a secret ballot. And the unions wouldn't be pushing this bill if the intent was to have secret ballot elections. The intent is to get rid of them. And the other thing I would say to you is, if I were in your shoes up there today, I might be thinking, good God, why am I sitting here listening to this debate that is something about Washington? This has real implications for the commissioners in Lee County. There is accompanying legislation in Washington that unfortunately I believe will pass, even though we'll fight it to the death, that would require county commissioners like you to collectively bargain with police, firefighters, and EMT workers. Even though we have a state law against it, that is moving through Congress, and it would force you. You would, at a minimum, would have to negotiate with sheriff deputies, county-paid EMS workers if you had county firefighter, jailers. So think about this. You could be forced to do that by Washington, and then this coercive process where people can take these cards and shove them in people's faces at the ball games here in Lee County and force people to be a member of public employee unions. To take those two pieces together, and it can be real devastating to the right to work in North Carolina, especially for public employee unions or public employees and for private business here. This has real implication in Lee County. I urge you to vote for the resolution and to protect and speak out for protecting everybody's individual right to a secret ballot. No matter how you vote on this today, I do thank you for taking the time to consider it, because it has real-world implications here in Lee County. But as representing the members of Americans for Prosperity in Lee County, I ask you to vote for the resolution and against the misnamed Employee Free Choice Act. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. James Andrews.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you so much for this opportunity. I am that person this young man referred to. I want to do a couple of things real quick. First, I want to paint you a picture of the union members in your city here. I dare say there are probably firefighters here that belong to a union that's in this room. You have a local here. Across this state, in every major city, Raleigh, Greensboro, firefighters and police officers. And every major city, there are teachers that in the school system and bus drivers that belong to the union. The Carolina Panthers belong to the union. Postal workers that bring you your mail belong to the union. Letter carriers that bring your mail, the UPS belong to the union. So I don't know where we get that we ought to bash unions. That's one point. Second point, I challenge anyone about my civil rights day. I have lived it, not dreamed it, but lived it. Something is wrong with America when we give folks right and then put so much threat and intimidation, they're afraid to take advantage of that right. I live that. And I say to you, remember a couple of numbers. Since the time this act was enacted, two numbers I want you to remember. 42. 42 times since 35, unions have been found guilty of intimidating and threatening workers. 42 times. 3,000. Every year, 3,000 or more employers are found guilty of threats and intimidation. Let me give you another number that really shocks me. In 2007, 27,000 workers were denied, the labor board said to the employer, you got to pay them back wages because you fired them unjustly and wrong. You intimidated and fired them. 27,000 workers in 1 year. Because, now can you imagine an election process that you say to Barack Obama, you're running for president, But every employer in this state gonna say to their workers, if you vote for Barack Obama, you're gonna lose your job. Workers called me and said, I just got an interview, but the boss said if I said something about a union, I'm fired. Can you imagine this? I'm gonna close your plate of working that you're working. I'm gonna close it down, I'm gonna move it out. How can you have a fair election in that kind of environment? Smithfield is a prime example. What's the poster child? 16 years workers trying, but finally the company, they have almost 85% of their workers in unions. Finally the company said, oh, I'm gonna step back. I'm gonna let you do what you're supposed to do. I'm not gonna violate the law this time. Workers in December, as you know, 5,000. Let me just say one thing. Do y'all know state workers belong to a union? State 55,000 of them belong to a union. That happened last year. So a point I'm making is, one other point. Do you know most union when in negotiation, that they're not able to reach a first contract? That's why you got the provision in. And the reason you got the other provision in there is that employees violate the law. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We do need to ask, I'd like, just for the record, sir, are you from Lee County?
I'm like my friend here. We're about to jump the ship, right? My name is James Andrews. I'm president of the North Carolina State FLC. I represent 170,000 good, hard-working union men and women in this state.
Very good. We just did not have those addresses down for several of you. And Mr. Cubison, you're?
I'm from Raleigh also.
Okay.
Where's Mr. Woodhouse from?
I'm from Raleigh. I thought I said that. I apologize.
Okay. Okay, that's good. Now, Mr. Mike McDonald.
Yep, I'm Mike McDonald from Lee County. And I rise in support of employee free choice. But the way I read this act, it's taking away employee free choice. I can't understand how a country that celebrates democracy around the world, and when Iraqis, raise their blue finger saying that they have participated in a democratic secret ballot, that former presidents like Jimmy Carter travel around the world to make sure that democratic secret ballots are conducted properly. Can't imagine that anyone would want to change a law that's been in effect for such a long time. Maybe needs some tweaking, but to remove the secret ballot provision would be a disaster. And I support what Linda Shook has done here with you commissioners, and I hope you commissioners can show the citizens of Lee County that you too support the secret ballot by voting for this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Bob McCarthy. Mr. McCarthy, is he here? He may be out.
Standing room only.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. McCarthy.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate very much being here and having this opportunity to express my opinion. I'm in favor of Linda Shook's resolution. Unions are expensive, big businesses. They require a lot of money coming in to pay the highly paid executives, lobbyists, organizers, and to invest many dollars in political contributions. Their only income comes from the dues paid by members. So to increase income, they need to increase the number of dues-paying members. All the money to support unions has to result in an increased cost of the products or services provided by the unionized companies, making them less competitive in the marketplace. Unions hire top graduates from the best universities to train to become professional union organizers. These professional organizers are personable persuasive, clever salespeople who are experts in getting employees to sign their names on union cards. They have expense accounts for entertaining. They are good at recruiting informal leader-type employees to assist them with the others. Currently, signature cards are required, as I understand it, from some percentage of employees to schedule a secret ballot election to decide whether or not to have a union. This proposed legislation only requires that they get signed cards from a majority of the employees and the union is in. There's no secret ballot election. Obviously, this would result in many more businesses of all types and sizes being unionized. This also would result in higher prices charged for goods or services, making the companies less competitive, forcing more of them to go out of business or to move to union-free locations. For the good of our economy, I strongly recommend approving Linda Shook's resolution.
Thank you very much, Mr. McCarthy. Again, speakers, please state your name and your home address when you come up, please. Mr. Frederick Sharon. Is Mr. Sharon and Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
If you would state your name and your address, sir.
My name is Frederick J. Sharon. I live at 5084 Carbondon Road, Sanford, North Carolina.
Thank you.
I passed out a document. Unfortunately, I was a couple short, getting enough for each one of you to have one. So I would appreciate it if one of you would get somebody to make another copy, or if Ed didn't get one, I can give him one. If he'll come by the house, I'll be glad to give him one. The reason I'm here is to talk about specifically the resolution on the union. First of all, I think North Carolina for years has had a so-called right-to-work law, which basically has worked out the right to work for nothing. That's what that law is all about. It's for the companies. Now, people that are members of the union make 28% more in wages than non-union workers. That's a good thing. 52% of them are more likely to have health benefits than their counterparts that don't have unions. That's a good thing. They're not on the welfare rolls. They're not going down to get Medicaid. I mean, when we start interfering with people's right to have a union, that's a constitutional right. We got no business messing with it. Another thing about it, all of you are elected officials. You're elected to do what the people want to do. 53% of all the people in this country, of course I realize y'all don't represent all of them, but 53% of the people would prefer that their jobs, they had a union represent them. Now that's up quite a bit from the Ronald Reagan days, when Mr. Reagan, who was the president of the Actors Guild, which is nothing but the union. You know what I mean? But he betrayed all his beliefs. when he done what he did to the comptroller's union, he just got a little upset because the unions had never striked on the government very much. And he just meant he was gonna have his vengeance. And he did. And of course, at the same time, what he did was lay open every passenger that boarded an aircraft for the next 8 to 10 years, and even right now, to the hands of people that didn't know what they were doing. The comptrollers that they hired to replace those comptrollers.
3 minutes, right?
Yes, sir.
Your time is up. I
All
must
right.
tell you that.
Well,
We have to stick to it.
well, I thank you for your time, and I'm sorry I took up too much time.
Thank you, and come
But
again.
But I do hope y'all will read the literature I left out, and be sure Ms. Shook has a copy.
Got one right here, sir.
I do want to have some copy that has good facts on it.
Thank you, sir. The final speaker is Mrs. Thomas, I believe, Susie Thomas. Good afternoon.
I'm not sure if I'm here at the right time. I'm actually here for new business with the courthouse agenda.
Well, I think maybe it's just a little premature.
That's why I wanted to, I'm outside.
Okay,
Thank
very good, thank you. Okay, I think that concludes the remarks, and now I think to move along, we will turn to the old business of the day, which is what much of this conversation has been about, and this is subject is resolution opposing the Employee Free Choice Act. And I believe that it would be appropriate at this time to ask for a motion.
I move that we, first of all, I want to clear up, this resolution is not about unions. This is not a union discussion. What this revolution is the secret ballot is something that as Americans we hold dear. It's a fundamental American right. And just as all of us, when we go to the polls on election day to elect our president, our members of Congress, our state representatives, our county commissioners, we know that we can go into that booth and vote in private without intimidation from neighbors, from peers. Now, I don't know if any of you have read this legislation. Okay, I have. And there is nothing in this legislation that does not permit workers to sign cards that call for an election without also counting those signatures as part of majority. Okay.
Okay, so.
We're going to have discussion on this?
Yes, there will be discussion.
I move that this board accept this resolution.
Okay, now is there any further, any discussion on this?
Can I discuss further now?
Yes, you may.
Okay. First of all, this discussion is not, and if the Fayetteville Observer is here, I'd like for you to clean up your record or clear the record. I am not an anti-labor lobbyist, as was reported in the Fayetteville Observer. I'm a commissioner who was elected to this board, just like my colleagues. And I fully support a worker's right to join a union. I'm not anti-union, but I will fight to my death the right to do that in private, okay? That's a fundamental American right that we must not let go. Now, I heard lots of statistics and polls, and I'm always leery of statistics and polls because they can be flawed. But I just want to share with you some information that I have. It's a poll that was done by Zogme International, and it was commissioned by the Mackinac Center for Public Policy, and it was a nationwide survey of union members and their views on labor unions. Now, I'm not going to share everything with you, but there are some statistics that really stick out. One question, says, currently the government is responsible for holding secret ballot elections for workers who are deciding whether to form a union and for making sure workers can cast their votes in a fair and impartial manner. Do you agree or disagree that the current secret ballot process is fair? 71% of labor people said it's fair the way it is. Another question, do you agree or disagree that stronger laws are needed to protect the existing secret ballot election process and to make sure workers can make their decisions about union membership in private without the union or their employer or anyone else knowing how they vote? 63% agree that the laws need to be stronger. Another important statistic, should Congress keep the existing secret ballot election process for union membership, or should Congress replace it with another process that is less private? 78% of union members say keep the existing process. And you know, there's some other good questions in there, but I think that it's important to realize that this legislation does not guarantee that voters will be able to have a free election, a private election, because when they sign that card, they also, according to this, will be counted as the majority that's there. I think it's very important, folks, that we defend the private ballot in the workplace, just as we do when we go to vote for our other elected officials. And the essence of this resolution is to say that as local elected county officials, that we support a worker's right to choose in private whether or not he or she wants to join a union. And I fully trust the intelligence of workers when they have that secret ballot process. Under current law, they are allowed to hear from both the employer and the union. And I fully trust the intelligence of those workers to decide what is best for them and their families. But I also will support to my death the fact that they can currently do it in private, and the fact that they should be able to keep that right. And I would urge my colleagues to join me with other leaders. This is not a partisan issue. With other leaders from this community of both parties who have also written their members of Congress saying their opposition to the changes in these labor laws.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Shook. Is there any other discussion or comments?
Do you not trust the folks to do the right thing?
Mr. Reeves.
I'm asking.
Do I not trust the folks to do what?
Yeah, those who
What
want-
folks?
The ones who favor the Employee Free Choice Act. You think they're not bright enough to make wise decisions?
Would you like me coming to you and say, Robert, here's your, choices for president and vice president, you just mark it out and give it to me? And I think it's very important that their privacy, that the employer doesn't know how they voted. I think it's very important that union members and their co-workers not know how they vote.
If it's what I feel and believe, why should I be ashamed? Why wouldn't I want to do that? Why wouldn't I want to make it known? I guess my concern is that anytime there's some folks who come to assist me or tell me they want to help me, that automatically puts me on the defensive. So I'm trying to understand, what is it about this bill that you don't find helpful for folks who are capable of making their own decisions?
I'm saying people are perfectly capable of deciding, but I don't think that we need to take their right away from voting in private.
Why do you think
What's wrong with the current law, Mr. Reeves?
What's wrong with it is that most often folks find themselves being quietly intimidated and quietly persuaded not to participate. I want people to have their choice. Whatever way the pendulum swings, I want them to have their choice.
Well, and they currently have that choice.
Then why is it being changed?
That's a good question. Why was this bill introduced?
To improve it, to improve those opportunities.
I think that's up for debate. And as I said, this is not about the unions. This is about a worker's right to vote in private. That's all this is about. We can have a whole other debate on other things, but if you read this legislation, it's very much if an employer, the example I gave in the last meeting, comes in on a Monday morning and find out he's been unionized over the weekend without him even knowing it, it's very stiff penalties for that employer to even question or say anything. There's absolutely nothing in this legislation at all that would prevent unions from acting incorrectly or coercing people. So it's very much one-sided. Now, I will admit that probably the current labor laws need to be tweaked a little bit. That maybe if the process before when they hear, you know, the employer's side of it and whatever is so long, maybe that needs to be shortened up. But we do not need to take that private ballot away from American workers.
Okay. I'd like to ask, are there any other comments?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
first and foremost, I'm against unions, and I'm totally against this Employees Free Choice Act. I strongly support the North Carolina right to work law. I think it serves North Carolina well. And I like the intent of your resolution, but I don't like the form which is being presented to this board. And I'd like to see you do some revisions on it or something and come again with it.
Are there some specific paragraphs in here that you're uncomfortable with? I think that's fair for discussing.
Well, the next to the last whereas. Whereas the 28th National Convention of the Communist Party USA unanimously endorsed the Employee Free Choice Act. I don't know why that's got to be in the resolution.
Well, if anybody's ever been to the Communist Party USA website, it's interesting. But I will agree that probably doesn't belong here, and I'm okay with amending that to take that out. Is that the only problem you had with that?
Any other comments?
Well, I kind of weigh in here and be clear that I'm not in favor of this legislation either. And since this has become public information in the papers over the last weekend, I've had a lot of phone calls and a lot of interaction with folks. And I'll have to say, for the constituents that I have talked to in Lee County, they are overwhelmingly opposed to this legislation. I've only talked to a couple of folks that are in favor of it. And my job, as I see it on this board, is to represent the citizens in Lee County. I do, again, agree with Linda's intent, but I do take issue with some parts of the resolution, the whereas that was just mentioned. And also, I think if we're going to go about the business of a resolution, I think we need to dial it down more to how it specifically affects Lee County. And for that reason, I think it would be best if we would table it for now. And I know that's not what's being discussed right now, but just so as individual board members, we can have more conversation about how to make this more relevant to the citizens of Lee County. And with our retreat coming up, and I'm new at this, as most of you know, I think we need to figure out where our line's going to be as a board and how we react to federal and state legislation. And to be, as our forefathers set up our government, the strength of our government in America is for it to be a deliberative government and not knee-jerk reactions or emotional. There's been some great comments on both sides, and I think we just need to weigh it more as a board.
Are you prepared to put that in the form of a motion?
Yeah, I mean, I think we
Has
need.
to be a motion to.
Is there another motion on the floor already?
That was my understanding.
If the motion to table it takes precedence.
Well, I'd make a motion to table it and try to work on it as a board. And
Can I get a sense from this board how many really are opposed?
Pardon me. Let's run this through parliamentary-wise the way it should be now. There's a motion on the floor to table this, and then we're required to discuss that fact, how we would feel about tabling it, which means that it would be put off to whatever. And I think we'll find out by discussing the tabling of this what that implies. And so there is a motion to table, and I would like to ask, and that does take precedence, if there's discussion on the motion to table.
People, we all have had this since last Wednesday, so I will agree that there may be some things in here, some wording that you may want differently. So I'm okay with, discussing any changes that you want to make. We've discussed the paragraph that Commissioner Odom had mentioned. I think that, based on the phone calls I received from small business owners and others over the weekend, that this pretty much does reflect, what the people I've talked to represent. So I would be against tabling this, and I would be for discussing this and modifying it if there's anything in here that any commissioner is uncomfortable with.
Any further discussion on tabling the motion? All right, Mr. Reeves, just on the tabling, would you have anything to say?
Anything that was voted down, period.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Panscom, would you care to come into this and about the, speak to tabling this motion? Okay, all right. I have a few comments to make myself. I think that the wording of this resolution can be improved. I think there are parts to it that need careful consideration. I think there are some words and some things in this resolution as it's been presented to us that are inflammatory, possibly. And it makes me uncomfortable when I read it. And yet, I have no problem personally with the thrust of what it's about. But I don't think it represents, as well as it should, what we in Lee County are about. And I had to think about this because I felt at first that this perhaps was not the place for us to take this kind of time with the types of problems we've got on our backs to get into and wade into something that's national legislation, which has yet to really be approved. We don't know where it's going. So in a way, I don't want to be a Trojan horse for something that, and go where we should not be going. At the same time, as a private citizen, I have no hesitation at all to say to Mrs. Shook or to anyone else how I feel about this personally, what my sense of the union is and what it was conceived to be, how it's played out through the years, what it is today and what it may be tomorrow. But having said that, I really think that we need to, I would be in favor of tabling this myself because I think that, with all due respect, I think it can be improved upon. And I wanted to make that, I think the hyperbole that's used, which it means exaggeration of some words and phrases, is something that we could throttle, we could tone down, and as Mrs. Dalrymple has said, make this more applicable to our local community in a more practical way. This is something sort of out of the book, and I think some of it is acceptable. It might be even shortened to get the point across, if that is the way the board finally agrees, to make the point and then to move on beyond it. The other thing I'd like to say is I'd be interested in seeing other people wade into this because I think it's a valid point you bring up and a valid argument within our community, because this is a grassroots and these are the people who work and who make our community thrive and go. And so the question of unionization, I think, is a very real American question that needs to be addressed. I would like to see the city of Sanford speak to the matter. How do they feel about it? And I've had some people say to me, perhaps a joint resolution between the city and the county might be something that would be useful so that this is not just a commissioner's thing, but this is a resolution that reflects the spirit of our community. And then thirdly, I wanted to read something because there is this sort of pro and con about unionization And I know that through the years has been bitter, can be. And yet we all understand we want our workers to be treated well and paid well. And I had a friend who I respect greatly and who is a very wise man to come into this today. I got a lot of calls. This was something that I thought he was for opposing this legislation. And I talked about, is this the time, is this the place, Lee County, are we going to be a lightning rod for this kind of thing? You know, whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. But he then expressed himself in writing, and I thought that there was one paragraph that struck me, and this is kind of where I come from. He says, regarding pro-labor, in today's world, there should be no division between labor and management, but a common goal of making the company successful in order to provide job security and good pay and benefits. Pro-labor or pro-management are terms from the old terminology of the unions, and another reason they have become irrelevant. His whole point here was that this is 2009, and we need to be looking at this anew and asking ourselves what applies and what does not, and what's good for Lee County and Sanford is what is not. And that's a long way of saying, and pardon me for being long-winded about it, but I felt like you and the people who watch this program need to know that this kind of thing it's good and it's also troubling. It really causes us to reach down and to look at some fundamentals of our American livelihood and what we're all about. And so, but I believe that this is due a proper vote, but I think in a better format. I think it can be. I'm not pleased with the wording of the use of communism in it. I don't think that's necessary. And I don't think it's appropriate to talk in terms of union bosses and pressures and this kind of thing. And these are words that are in this resolution. I think it can be cleaned up. I think it can be made a document that if this commission approves it, or if it does not, that it's one that we could say we were involved in the process and we stand by it as the Lee County Board of Commissioners. So with that, I'd like to ask once again, is there anybody else that has anything to say? And we'll vote on the tabling.
I'll even vote to table this, but here's what I think needs to be done. I think we do need to have a joint resolution. City of Sanford, Lee County, our Economic Development Commission, our Chamber of Commerce. I think all of those folks need to be involved in helping word this. The reason I'm bringing this up is I think it's going to take a real grassroots level, of activism for us. Ever since I've taken office now, I've railed on the unfunded mandates that get passed down to us and the results of us having to live with what those in our ivory towers have done. And so this is my first step at doing that. I've learned a lot from this process, but I will vote to table this if this group thinks that, it would be stronger and more powerful to have all of those other groups join in this and to help with the wording.
Well said. Sir.
I find it interesting that it's more of the same, fear tactics and bashing. That's what this whole premise is about. You talk about the small businesses and you rally to get them to support this resolution or some other form of it. When in fact, how many problems do we have here in Lee County that you know of? Firsthand.
With small businesses?
Yeah, unionizing.
I know.
Unionizing.
Well, first of all, without the unionization, I know that there are many small business owners in this county just trying to keep their heads above water.
Yeah, and I understand that. But tell me how many are being unionized? Do we have a problem here in Lee County that you know of? And if so, tell me what it is.
This whole resolution, Mr. Reeves, is not about unionization. It's about...
Well, you keep bashing the union.
It's about preserving the private ballot.
Yeah,
that's what this is
the other
about.
fear I have when you're trying to protect my private rights. This is the only time I hear you when you want to protect my private rights. It's when it helps you, not when it helps me, when it helps you. I work for...
Sir.
I worked for a company for many years And their theory was, forget whether or not your plant gets unionized. If you merely have an election, we feel like you've done something wrong that caused people to want to unionize. Because something has not been done right and fairly. Otherwise, good people continue to do good jobs, and they don't feel threatened. But what I hear in here today, and I look at this resolution, is another attempt to try, and I'm not a union member, never have been, another attempt to make people fearful of losing something. It's what it's all about.
I'm going to call this vote with one further comment. We still, every one of us have a vote. There are 7 of us, and this has not been voted for and will not, since we're going to table it, presumably, and take it back for more working. And Mr. Reeves, your points are well made. I invite you to wade into this rewriting of it, and then we still will have the opportunity to vote on it. And I would add just one footnote. My father went through this type of tribulation as a laborer and a worker, and so I really feel close to it. I understand and lived seeing this kind of thing go on. So in my own personal life, I can really appreciate the sensitivity on both sides and understand what you're talking about, because I saw it, and these are things that we need to work through and try to help each other with. This is not an easy kind of thing, and we're certainly not going to resolve it in Sanford, North Carolina, and Lee County, but we can make a statement, and that statement can be profound, and I think it challenges us to go to work and put some things down that really better reflect the attitude of this meeting today. And Mrs. Shook will sort of look to you for that.
I'll vote to
And,
table my own
and,
resolution.
and Mr. Reeves,
Even better.
any involvement would be most appreciated. Now, I'm
I
going
know my rights, I'll get involved if I choose to, but here's the other thing I'll say to you. Publicly, you ought to hold a public hearing and let other people have their say as well.
Okay, there's a motion to table this resolution at this time. All in favor of the resolution to table, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We will move along. Under new business, I might add that under new business, the first item, recommendations and discussion of Courthouse Advisory Committee request by Mr. Hager, and we want you to come forward, sir, and speak with us. I think that I made an error earlier, and I want to set the record straight. When Mrs. Thomas wanted to speak, I think that in the free forum of speaking, her 3-minute comments would have been valid, and I kind of jumped forward to this new piece of business coming up, and I'm not sure you could be in opposition to or have your own personal opinion. And so if it's okay with you, Mr. Hager, I'd like to invite her to come up and speak 3 minutes, and then we'll take you.
Okay.
Thank you. Mrs. Thomas. Sorry about that.
Good afternoon. My name is Susie Thomas. I'm the clerk here in Lee County. I live at 1030 Northview Drive, Sanford. I am a member of this committee. As the clerk's office ourselves, we actually provide services to the public. One of the new items is parking at the courthouse. As far as the clerk's office goes, we don't feel there's a parking problem. I don't know if any of you have seen the maps as far as the parking goes. What Mr. Hager's laid out would be asking the public to park way down the parking lot to come in for a public service that our office provides. I would ask each one of you to come by the courthouse to observe the parking. The second item is courtrooms. Courtroom number 3, I'm totally against removing the jury box from courtroom number 3. I thought this was a space needs committee. If we remove the jury box from courtroom number 3, he's wanting to take the jury pool room that I have in courtroom 3 to make it a lawyer's lounge. They already have a lawyer's lounge in the courthouse provided for them. They're wanting to reinstate the jury box to courtroom 1. We've had a jury box in courtroom 1 years ago. I was not the clerk, don't know the price. It was removed from courtroom 1. If we remove courtroom 3, reinstate courtroom 1, then courtroom 3 would not be big enough to house our child support court, our criminal court. He will talk about, we do not use courtroom number 4. We actually are using that courtroom more and more every Tuesday for what's called People's Court. And courtroom 4 is a jury, we have a jury pool room, jury box. When there's a murder special setting, we hold it in courtroom 4 to free up the other 2 jury rooms we have. With the economy, there's more lawsuits coming forward. I can tell you my first week in office, we had civil district, civil superior, we had a jury trial in both courtrooms, courtroom 2 and courtroom 3. So we're opposing removing the jury box from courtroom number 3. And as far as the parking goes, you know, taking the back parking lot on Cortland Drive where we park and making it a court official parking lot and putting 13 attorney spots, the judges spots, that's fine. The only problem when you move to the other court parking lot down by the jail, you're also going to reserve, I forgot, 17 spots, I think, for probation. So you're going to move the public down middle ways of that parking lot to come into the courthouse for a public service that the clerk's office provides. And I would ask each one of you to come by, talk to the staff at the courthouse, register of deeds, and take a look at, you know, the facility, take a look where he's wanting to move the jury box from and reinstalling it in courtroom 3.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hager.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, and other members of the commission, I'm appearing before you today to present the recommendations passed by the courthouse committee unanimously at our February meeting. What I'd like to do is just summarize what those recommendations were. Before doing that, if I might briefly speak to the new commissioners. The Lee County Bar Association passed a unanimous resolution back in October of last year asking this body to consider the appointment of a courthouse advisory committee. I appeared on behalf of the Bar Association at one of the November meetings of the commission, and as I recall, the commissioners unanimously approved the creation of this committee. It consists of the clerk of court, the register of deeds, the sheriff or his designee, the district attorney or his designee, a member of the Lee County Bar Association, and I am that representative, as well as Judge Love. This committee has had 2 meetings. I introduced, at the request of the Bar Association, 2 proposals. I presented them at the January meeting of this committee. The 2 proposals that I submitted had to do with a parking plan, number 1, and alterations to courtroom number 3 and the immediate surrounding area. In an effort to build consensus, I took a survey of all the departments, and they provided me with the number of spaces that they were requesting. And to simply have something to discuss at our January meeting, I asked Mr. Crumpton to provide me with a map. He did that, and I created a proposal. We discussed that at the January meeting, where all of the representatives that I've indicated, except I believe Judge Love, attended. There was some discussion. There were some additions. We made some changes, and at my suggestion, we were going to, that had to do with the parking plan. With regard to courtroom number 3, I don't believe anybody spoke in opposition to the proposal I made with regard to that at the January meeting. at the February meeting, and what I had suggested to my fellow committee members was that we think about it before we send a recommendation to this body and discuss it further at our February meeting. We met in February. Again, I believe all of the departments were represented that I mentioned earlier, and I omitted probation, which is also a member of this committee. At that meeting, again, I believe Judge Love was the only member that didn't attend. And I think part of the reason for that is these meetings have been held during business hours. And Judge Love is holding court over in Johnston County, as far as I know, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So he had business elsewhere. But I have talked with him about these proposals. At our February meeting, the committee unanimously adopted the parking plan, unanimously approved the changes to courtroom number 3, and unanimously approved a recommendation to reconvert courtroom number 1 back to a jury courtroom, and unanimously approved a request from the probation department that the SBI agent's office, located currently on the second floor of the new courthouse, be relocated to some other location, and that space be made temporarily available to the probation office, which is expanding and is telling this committee that they have no more space. So those were the 4 recommendations that I'm bringing to you today. I'm very surprised to hear the clerk of the court has had a change of position, but apparently she has. I have seen, as I'm sure this body has, some letters from Judge Frank Lanier, our resident Superior Court judge, as well as Judge Andy Corbett, our Chief District Court judge from over in Johnston County, indicating that they're opposed to the parking plan and opposed to the courtroom number 3 proposal. I have talked with Judge Corbett at length, trying to, number 1, keep him informed, and number 2, reach a consensus with him. In fact, the committee created the 3rd recommendation to try and address Judge Corbett's concerns about limiting or reducing the number of jury courtrooms in Lee County. Just as a matter of information, we currently have 3. I have practiced law in this community 30 years. There have not been more than a handful of occasions when we have had 2 juries in session at the same time. I am not aware that we have ever had 3 juries in session. Now, Judge Corbett's concerned about the future, and I understand that. But we're going to have to grow a whole lot before that becomes a practical consideration, in my opinion. If courtroom number 1 is the largest courtroom in the new courthouse, I believe, if I recall correctly, that was probably going to be the Superior Courtroom because of its size. It was a jury courtroom. Our then Chief District Court Judge was our own late native son, Bill Christian. And Judge Christian wanted that jury box taken out of courtroom number 1, and it was done. Why? I'm not sure, but that's what happened. So all we're really proposing to try and address Judge Corbett's concern about keeping 3 jury courtrooms in place is that we simply reconvert courtroom number 1 to a jury courtroom like it was originally. And that we take courtroom number 3 and remove the jury box from that courtroom. Now, the reason that we're asking for that, courtroom number 3 is the smallest courtroom in the courthouse. It can't handle child support court. It can't handle a session of criminal district court. And relocating the jury box to courtroom number 1 is not going to render that unavailable for any non-jury sessions. That's not even a reasonable argument. We hold non-jury sessions in every one of those courtrooms. Jury sessions are very rare. Courtroom number 1 is used for a criminal district court, as far as I know, 4 days a week. Juvenile court, child support court, every other Friday. It can continue to be used for that. Part of the reason the bar was interested in this is those of you who may have looked, the district attorney's office has grown. And we understand that. As fellow attorneys, we understand that they have to have adequate space. We, the members of the bar, have a longer range plan that we're going to bring before this body to try and get more useful life out of that courthouse complex. When that courthouse was built and opened, I think in '95, I recall, because I was on a little committee that didn't get paid any attention to, of lawyers, that building was supposed to last us for 25 years. And here we are, 14 years into the life of the building, and we're running out of space. Now, I will tell you, the biggest waste of space at that courthouse is not using the old Superior Courtroom in the old courthouse, which is the best courtroom we've got in Lee County. It's the largest, and it's the most well-designed. And it is not being utilized. The only way, however, we're going to be able to make maximum utilization, it is being utilized of late for People's Court on Tuesdays. Well, that's a recent development. That has not been the case since '93 until recently. We need to use it more than that. But the only way we're going to be able to use it for the jury is we're going to have to relocate probation out of the bottom of that building. And I'm just forecasting where the bar wants to go with this thing. And I've told the committee this. But rather than come at you with, we're aware of the economic circumstances. And these are the 4 proposals that this committee has unanimously recommended to you for your consideration. I'll be happy to try and answer any questions that anybody might have.
Thank you very much. Stand by. Any questions for Mr. Hager?
I have a question. How much will all this cost?
I have no idea.
Okay, well, that's my first question.
Well, I understand, and I believe I've read the agenda package, and I believe that Mr. Crumpton is in the process of trying to price some of that.
Okay.
It's certainly going to cost something.
Out of your
I'll find my notes in just a minute.
recommendations, how many are now being challenged under your, or at least you don't have a unanimous support for?
Well, based on what I've heard here today, the clerk of the court is opposing all of the recommendations with the exception of the 4th one I mentioned about the SBI office. No other committee member, to my knowledge, has changed their mind since our February meeting, other than the clerk.
Are you raising your hand back there?
I'd like to clarify, at our second meeting, I had to leave at 5 to 11. Before I walked out of the meeting, I let Mr. Hager know I was opposed to any changes with courtroom 3 before I left that meeting. I sent a representative in from my office. By unanimous vote, they all, throughout the meeting, had discussed their, let me just say this. By unanimous vote, I assume they took a vote at the end, by unanimous vote. My understanding was there was no unanimous vote taken at the end of either meeting. I was in the first meeting. We never voted unanimous on any of these. I left early the second meeting, but I did let him know before I left I was objecting to courtroom 3. I have not had a change of heart.
Thank you. Let's keep this in context and order here. Thank you very much for those comments. Any other comments from the commissioners?
I haven't finished hearing what I asked. You let me finish? I mean, I'm waiting on...
I thought you had, Mr. Reed.
No, I haven't. Tell me on your... You mentioned 2 of the judges, and what were they concerned with? You said,
Judge Corbett is the only one I've spoken with.
all right,
I have attempted to communicate with Judge Lanier. I have invited both of those gentlemen to meet with our committee because neither one of them are on the committee.
right.
And they have declined. Judge Lanier basically said he had no interest in serving on any such committee. I don't know what his opposition is.
All right.
Judge Corbett's opposition was what I mentioned previously.
Yeah.
He has concerns that we're going to need 3 jury courtrooms sometime in the future before we outgrow that complex.
Well, obviously, you have the clerk, you have at least one of 2 judges who has some concern or opposition. It would seem to me, before this body took it upon itself to spend any money or make any changes, we'd like to have, I would certainly like to hear something much clearer than what I'm hearing today.
With all respect, I don't know how I can make it any clearer.
Well,
but he is opposed to
obviously,
it.
it's not me you gotta convince. You
Well,
have
I understand, and I don't think Judge Corbett is convincible. You know, I have asked him what his suggestions are, and he's not provided any. He's just opposed to things.
Okay,
Mr. Reeves, is that it?
yeah, right now.
Okay.
I'm just gonna ask Mr. Hager.
Yes.
Out of the 4 requests, items on the request, which one had the highest priority for your committee?
Well, as the bar's representative, I introduced the parking plan and the changes to courtroom number 3 at the very first meeting. And Ms. Thomas is quite right. We didn't take any vote, as I said earlier, at the first meeting. I put the proposals on the table. At the second meeting, there was this discussion. Judge Corbett had been in contact with Ms. Thomas and others on that committee, expressing his concerns about changing the courtroom number 3 to a non-jury courtroom. There was a discussion that ensued, and I believe it was after Ms. Thomas left the meeting. She did have a representative there, Ms. Sawyer. And the discussion was that we reconvert 1 to a jury courtroom. That seemed to be a reasonable compromise in the minds of the committee, and so that's how that came up. The 4th proposal was originated at that meeting by probation, saying that they had a new position, they had no place or space to put this person, and that they wanted to use the SBI office. That's how that came up. Those 4 matters were then put to a vote of the persons that were present and unanimously approved.
Mr. Evans?
Do you know the cost yet?
I have a couple comments, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to remind you that in your packet, you have a letter from Susan Doyle. I don't believe he's here today, but Mike Beam is here representing the District Attorney's Office. I don't know if they want to speak, but as courtesy, you might want to allow him to speak in a little bit. But I attended the first meeting of the committee, and Mr. Hole attended the second. So, and we've been obviously batting this back and forth amongst ourselves about what's going on. I have also spoken to Judge Corbett, and last week he expressed his opposition to these plans. Just as a point of reference, I think we've worked out item number 4 for the probation office. And Andrea Curran, I think, is going to move out of her office that's on the stairwell that's between the first and second story and give that office to probation. And we're finding her other space in the courthouse. So I think we worked out item 4. The new park, well, I have the parking plan here, and there's a lot to it. The first issue is the new parking lot that would be on the, I guess that's the southeast corner of the, estimated at $32,000 for the cost. Just the security arm and gate that would create the employee courthouse staff, called the privacy parking lot, is about $5,000. And then we're still working, we haven't gotten an estimate on all the signs either, because we have to have signs for all the parking spots. And then we have some issues with the renovations that would be proposed to courtroom number 1, I believe it is. Courtroom number 3. That's where they want to put the lawyer's lounge off the back. We're dealing with load-bearing walls there to do some of the wall moves, and may have some issues there structurally as to whether we can do some of that stuff. Of course, the jury box can be removed, but I'm not sure how we can actually create that access that they needed to have created with those load-bearing wall issues. So there's still some things to work out there. And I have spoken to Sheriff about courtroom number 4. I think one of the reasons that it's not more utilized is security issues. If it's used for a jury courtroom, you know, they're coming outside of the jail, walking, you know, the defendant, inmate, across the courtyard, and there's really nowhere to hold them in the old courthouse. There's no holding cell or anything like that. So he had a concern about the security, and I'm assuming that's really the main issue as to probably why it's not used, even though I understand it's used for murder trials, you know, when we have big trials. So obviously they work out security for that. So anyway, that's just, you know, what he had to say to me. I think it's hard to explain what they're trying to do without walking through the courthouse and showing you what they're trying to do. I took Vice Chairman and Chairman over there, and we walked through it. And I'd be happy to take everybody else over there to walk through it as well, because it's difficult, and plus you get to talk to everybody, and you also get to see the big changes that have been made in the district attorney's office. And I guess that area back there has become a little bit more cramped, and that's probably why the attorneys are wanting a bigger room or a more private room. And I don't know if privacy is an issue with the district attorney too, is because you got the district attorney and the lawyer's lounge just separated by a wall and a door, and there might be some issues there.
No,
with privacy.
that's not an issue, but the size is an issue, and in looking down the road, the district attorney's office really has nowhere else to expand unless that space is vacated, the jury room is vacated, and the grand jury room is vacated. And as part of where we plan to go in terms of future recommendations, as I've already told you, Mr. Crumpton, we think that that's what needs to be done over at the old courthouse to free that space up for the district attorney's future expansion, as well as the district court judge's office potentially.
Okay.
But anyway.
Well,
And I didn't go into detail about these parking plans, but there are a lot of details. I'll be happy to discuss it with any of you at any time.
Anybody wants
I'd like to, unless there's some objection, to say this to you. First, to thank you for a very detailed report as far as it goes. I think there's a lot to be learned, a lot to be seen and felt, and prices and to be considered. And we're going into a budget session, which is going to be a crusher, to say the least. And I'd like to just recommend that we just defer any action today and take this under advisement and look at it carefully. And I'll look to Mr. Crumpton to kind of lead our charge there with you, Mr. Hager, to put it in a way that we can better digest it and come back to it and do the best we can with it. It's kind of a big challenge here, a lot of parts to it, and I think that we need to be more familiar with it to treat it as it should be treated. So if that's satisfactory, and with the commission concurring, I'd like to move on, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Let me ask you, is the district attorney involved in your committee meeting?
I was very confused about that letter, Mr. Reeves. I informed Mr. Bean, who's our senior, and I see that he's here. Good to see you, Mike. Good to see you. That this committee had been appointed And I believe that Mr. Crumpton, when he mailed out notices, sent them to Mike. Mike told me that he was the representative on the committee.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if there's some kind of communication problem there.
Well, Mike's been out of work a while.
He has, and he's had some stand-ins.
I'd like to ask the board to allow the manager to answer the district attorney's letter inviting her to participate, or her delegate.
Yeah, and we have no problem with that. I mean, she has an appointment to that seat as it is. It was my understanding that the appointee was Mr. Bean.
Okay.
But I'm, from that letter, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
I have
Yes,
one
sir.
thing. Is there any way you can get some buy-in from Judge Lanier and Judge Corbett? I mean, I know it seems to me that y'all would, if they pitch a fit on what's being done, it's going to be very difficult for everybody involved. So
I don't, I'd love to have them aboard.
Yeah.
I'd love to have them, I don't know, Judge Lanier has not told me what his opposition is. And as I said,
in
Judge
his letter,
Corbett.
I don't know that it was opposition. It's just that no action be taken until.
Yeah, and I'm all for, us, if this, we're an advisory committee.
Right.
And if this board decides to move forward, that'll be up to this board. And I think there should be some plans, and I think people like Judge Corbett and Judge Lanier ought to have a chance to comment about it. We welcome their comments. I've asked them, what they want. And Judge Corbett's real objection was the loss of one jury courtroom by converting 3. And we thought we'd address that when we decided to reconvert 1, but from what I read in his last letter, apparently that doesn't satisfy him. But I don't know.
Well, thank you. We'll,
Yes.
we'll bring others into it as appropriate so that we got all points of view. We want to do our best.
Yeah, and we have a judge on the committee. And I felt like he was able to represent the interests of the judges, but I don't know.
Okay.
Apparently not. Thank you.
Moving along now to the next item is the appointment to the Sand Hills Mental Health Board. And I wonder, Mrs. Shook, if you might wish to speak to this in any way. We have, as you know, one candidate, and I might say that I was thinking that, like we've done in the recent past, we would invite other candidates to advertise and ask if there are any others. And so maybe it's a concurrence that I'm looking for here so that we can move on. This person seems very able from the resume.
She actually did this at my request. She had also, when there was an opening on the health board, had applied for that, and we had several really good candidates for that. So I was advised by Michael Watson that we had a vacancy here. I encouraged her, called her to see if she is interested in being considered, and I encouraged her to apply, but I have no problem with opening this up like we did with the Fire Advisory Board.
Well, we will try, if there's no objection, to be as expeditious as possible on that and seek any other people that would wish to, since this is now more public, to invite any other candidates who might wish to be considered for this, and perhaps as soon as our next meeting we'll be able to take action. And to thank this particular individual for coming forward, because she certainly appears to be very qualified. The next item was added to our agenda, and it's a letter from Mr. Willis. And Mr. Reeves, would you guide us through this, please? I don't have that letter in front of me, but maybe I should.
You want to cover something else and maybe let somebody make copies?
I can read it real quick.
Okay.
It's a very short letter. It's in response to the letter that I sent to the 911 board with the 1989 letter of intent from the city of Sanford and Lee County in the Alltel Hines. Basically says this document does not appear to address the concerns previously presented or discussed by the 911 board, nor does it appear to constitute an agreement between the city and Lee County as discussed in our conference call on January 9th. At this time, I plan to place Sanford's request for release of 911 fund monies on the board's agenda for decision at its March 13th, 2009 meeting. I encourage you, or on behalf of Lee County, to seek resolution and agreement with Sanford prior to the next 911 board meeting. Now, I've had a discussion with Chairman Willis since then, and the item will not be on the March 13th agenda. So, and the basic issue is here. The city is making claim that under the new law, says the money can only be given to the primary PSAT. So they're making claim to get the money directly allocated to them. Also under the new 911 rules, it says that the 911 board is responsible for making sure these services are delivered to all the people that pay the fee. They can't do either one without the contract between these two parties. So until there's a contract between the two parties, this item won't be discussed by their board. So, you know, the stalemate continues, and hopefully, you know, both boards will see fit to come together and do what's best, and we can move on.
Mr. Reeves?
I would ask this board to consider extending an agreement that reflects what we currently have in place at this time. Leave it just as it is, with one inclusion, and that is to put in place a committee to respond to any concerns that other vested parties may have regarding their inability to get the kind of service or whatever the concerns might be. Put a committee made up of both boards to include the town of Broadway, and have that in place immediately and get this money back into Lee County. If you all know that the governor just stepped it up 2% more, making it 9%. The Senate Pro Tem said that he felt that 10 was probably where it ought to be, and it could go higher. That money is going to start to look real good to those in Raleigh in positions of power and won't sit there very long. We're making a horrible mistake in our judgment by not trying to work this deal out. Bring it home, bring the money home, and then we can talk about all the changes we want to make, but get the money home. And that's my motion.
Very good. Any comments?
Isn't that what the last contract we sent them was basically what the current agreement was?
I think there's probably some I don't know, differences in how to word the what's going on. There seems to be some issues with who is the jurisdiction. You know, what's the jurisdiction? I mean, the wording issues that are going on in some of the things. I think, you know, each party is reading too much into things, and I think we need to get beyond the paranoia that we're trying to hurt one another or do something different and just get on with it. But you still have to.
Can we get something in writing?
Well, we have several versions now in writing, and I'm hopeful that the last one that was presented to them would get some discussion. I think the city was hoping that there would be discussion on them just getting the funds direct without a contract. But you know, we're going to oppose that. There's no reason why there can't be a joint agreement on this. There's no reason.
But it has to be in writing for the 911.
It's got to be in writing.
I think they pretty well have in hand a proposal like Commissioner Reeves proposed. I think they pretty well have that in hand now. They just got to make up their mind. It's got to be tweaked a little bit, I think, on both sides, and that's what the attorneys are trying to do.
I think one of the things that the city communicated to the 911 board that they have an issue with is time frame. And right now the contract does not have a term in it. It just says until both parties no longer agree that it's beneficial to either party. We should probably put in a term. You know, 5 years.
Could put 5 years in, and
with an additional 5 at the discretion of both boards, if that makes them happy. And also, you know, there's the issue of the money, and I think we need to sit down and discuss with them, you know, future uses of the money, and if anything happens again where the fund is allowed to be used for other purposes, how that will be dispersed. if they want to discuss that. But right now, they seem to be wanting to get all of the money, and hopefully we can get beyond that and get an agreement.
Mr. Kelly, did you?
That was just one of the things. Couldn't you do that after we just
Sure we could.
you know,
And
get the money flowing back down this way?
I agree.
Well,
But that's why it's not in there. But
there's the time factor, which I think we're all saying that would be not unreasonable. And the money, I think we have that responsibility, have had. There's precedent for that, and will continue. I'd like to just say this, and thank you, Mr. Reeves, for bringing it up in this way. We have a responsibility to all of the citizens of Lee County. We particularly have for 9/11, and we have partners, and that's the city. And we have made some very real goodwill, good faith efforts to put this to rest. I want everybody to know that, and the people who are watching this meeting, I feel that we can defend it. We need to keep it at a low threshold. We need to go ahead, and we're absolutely right, Mr. Reeves is, that, and I think we've said it before, shame on us all if we let this money get away from us that we deserve and have earned. But there's a giant sucking noise up in Raleigh, and if we're going to bump along here, and we run a very real risk of losing it, and I think that's rather juvenile and beneath us when we should stand up and say, hey, you know, this is about both the city and the county and our people, and we're not going to let this get away from us. And if there are other types of things that need to be addressed, well, we have 2 or 3 times put that on the table, and we have been really working an agreement, but we just cannot seem to get together. There's a lot of wordsmithing going on, which means interpreting the meaning of various words. But I can tell you from the county's point of view, we have no design other than to keep going what is going and provide the best service we can for all the citizens of Lee County. And we have got to bring this thing to a conclusion. And I hope that will happen this coming week. We really need the city to join us and reach out and trust us to do the best for all of the people. And the people of the city of Sanford are citizens of Lee County, and I think no one should ever lose sight of that. There's no resolution, there's no motion here. I think that, but it's...
No, that is a motion.
There is a motion. What is that motion, Mr. Reeves?
To do just what I asked.
Would you
recommend it to the board that we send forth an agreement that reflects what is currently in place. What's currently in place, whatever that document is, if it needs to have a time frame included, then do so.
Okay.
And to establish a committee to listen to any concerns that may be out there.
Okay.
It's made up of Sanford, Lee County, and Broadway.
Well,
Are elected officials on that committee? So that there's a venue. My main concern is I want to make sure that all the stakeholders have a venue with somebody who's got accountability to be able to address their concerns.
I'm fine with that.
Can we also include that agreements could also be directed to the city and county manager?
Well, I would expect that any agreements would be shared with all bodies, all elected bodies. That's one of the things that I've always supported, is that we just can't leave it dangling with the committee because they're recommending committees. We're the elected body that should have the final say on how things go.
Okay, well, I think we understand the spirit, exactly of what you're saying, and Mr. Crumpton, you've got some latitude here to make some things happen and with our involvement. So in the spirit of what Mr. Reeves has said, and I think we all understand it, I'd like to call for a vote. All in favor of the motion as presented by Mr. Reeves, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item is, we called it E, and it is the joint approval of joint application for Lee County Board of Education for ADM funds. And Mrs. Shook asked that this be pulled so that a little bit better discussion could take place. And so, Mrs. Shook, would you like to lead us into that or raise questions that you might have?
Well, I think that you probably all got the notification from the NCACC that the General Assembly has, I think it's General Assembly, Governor Perdue has suspended, the ADM funds and is transferring probably some of the lottery funds. And so I'm just wondering what financially this means for us, with these ADM funds, if there are projects that have been committed to, work done, that's now required to be paid for, but the state's going to withhold that money. So that's the reason I asked to have it pulled.
Yes. Go ahead, Lisa. She's the one that's crunching the numbers.
Okay. Last, I think it was Thursday afternoon, after Governor Perdue's actions, there was a conference call hosted by the association for the finance directors to better understand what had been done. It is our understanding that only the February distribution at this point has been withheld. Unallocated funds that were sitting in individual counties' balances at this time are still available. Typically, we wait until we have enough unallocated funds to submit an application. With the economy the way it was, I had asked Ms. Howington at the schools to go ahead and get this application moving so that as soon as those funds were available, we could get to them. In between, this happened. We currently have about $420,000 in unallocated funds. That will leave us approximately $150,000 short this year to make up the funds that were budgeted to cover debt service this year. We had budgeted the $568,061 that you see on this application. That is debt service that we have to pay this year. Okay. The talk is that we may be reimbursed our February distribution with the May distribution. None of us quite understand that because the May distribution is our money too. So you can't reimburse us with our own money, but there is still talk that we may get the May distributions. I'm not holding my breath, okay? Just to understand. I'm giving you the picture they gave us. The reality is I know I'm probably never going to see my money. So I'm anticipating we're $150,000 short. That's the ADM picture. Earlier this year, you approved, I think it was close to $1.5 million in applications for lottery proceeds. Those were all projects that the school board had submitted to us during the budget process, of which you approved them using those funds, but understanding that if those funds were not there, those projects are not done. As those funds have become available, the DPI has approved various applications. All applications have not been approved at this time. They are approximately $300,000 short. But the schools know they cannot do those projects, that we are not committed to fund those projects unless lottery funds are available. Ongoing, there is talk or fear that the ADM funds could be taken indefinitely or forever. That could have a significant impact on our budgeting process. We have committed to debt service over the years with a capital funding plan that includes using ADM funds for debt service. We have intentionally, and maybe good, maybe bad, had chosen to leave lottery funds to do the pay-as-you-go, which gives us the option if we lose the ADM funds to take lottery proceeds and use them. We do have the 2006 COPS issue, and I believe even the 2004 COPS issue is acceptable debt for lottery funds to be used to pay for. So what could be done is that lottery proceeds could start being used for debt service in future years if that's what the board so chooses to do, instead of using all those for our ongoing capital projects at the school level. But the current impact this year is approximately $150,000. Our unallocated balance there does continue to earn interest, so that balance may slim as we try to get this application in and approved.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments of Mrs. Minder?
Do you know what projects were not funded?
I did not bring it in here with me, but I do have them. I'll be glad to go get it and come bring it back in and answer.
I'd like to see that.
Okay, I'll be glad to. I'll go get it and bring it back in before we finish.
So the $150,000 is going to have to come out of general fund or what?
Yep.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
To be part of our budget considerations here.
No, that's this year.
That's
We're
this year.
$150,000 short this year. That will be coming out of other revenues or from
Okay.
fund balance. Right now, it looks like you're going to be short across the board, and
Okay.
we'll be hitting fund balance this year.
Okay. Well, I think that we need a motion, since we've pulled this out. Are you satisfied, Mrs. Shook, that we should move forward with this?
I'm just wondering, does Governor Perdue have the sole say in this, or does the General Assembly vote?
On the ADM, she has the authority. Now, there's some discussion about whether she has the authority with the lottery, but if the state's in as bad a shape as they are, they got to get the revenue from somewhere. So, are they not going to back her on this? I mean, that's the question. Who's going to challenge her? And then if they challenge her, will the General Assembly just go ahead and change the law to allow the money to be used for this purpose? I think the biggest concern I have is actually for next year. What if they come in and decide to take both for next year?
And the discussion has been along those lines.
Yeah, last week it was. And so, you're $600,000 short ADM money, debt money, and then you're short 1.2 roughly in construction money to the schools. So we're supposed to be encouraging construction and keeping things moving, and here we are, we're going to lose money that encourages that. So,
That's for all those shovel-ready projects, huh?
well, the school has most of the shovel-ready projects around here, really. So, and now we're not going to be able to fund them unless they give us some different money from the stimulus package.
Honestly, you're on the union.
Well, I was going to ask Mr. Hager if he took a secret ballot at the committee.
Okay. Do I hear a motion on this so that we can move through it? Mrs. It says approve application for ADM funds as presented. Would you?
Absolutely, before it vaporizes.
Absolutely. Very well. I think we've discussed this thoroughly. All in favor of the motion to approve application for ADM funds as presented, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That is approved unanimously. Thank you very much.
Any good news, Lisa?
No.
I believe that the next matter is the manager's report. Wait a minute.
We skipped item C.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah. Consider the Lee County communications policy. All right. Let me just say to you that this is simply, we do not have at the moment, at this time, a formal communications policy on behalf of the Lee County Board, the Lee County Administration and Board of Commissioners. And this is an attempt simply to sort of bring together and codify what we've been working under in the past and sort of bring it all together into one document. Most organizations like this would have a document that guides it in how it communicates both externally and internally, what is priority and what is routine types of communications. And for each of those different levels, without trying to be too complex or bureaucratic, we simply want the employees, the people, to know how they should go about wishing to communicate internally as well as externally. And I think this is our attempt to put that in motion. And I wanted you to see it and to bring it to your attention and get your approval of this document. Or take it under advisement. There's no one trying to, but it's a straightforward type of document, if you've read it, that tells how it gives us a roadmap as to how we communicate as a governmental organization. I know the school board has such a policy. I'm not sure about the city of Sanford, but I would think it would be well advised to have something along these lines. Comments, questions?
My comment is, I'm a commissioner that represents District 4. Now, I represent a specific district for Lee County. And the board chairman, no offense, but the board chairman as the spokesman for the Board of Commissioners, I think that sort of undermines somebody that's from a district. And I don't know that, if somebody from the media calls me and wants my opinion on something, I'm going to give it to them. And my opinion might be different from the chairman's opinion. And I think there's a conflict there. Now, I can understand for the non-elected officials, but when you're an elected official, I think that there is a duty that you have for your constituency.
Right.
And I think this contradicts that.
Well, let me try to answer it, and it's a good point, good question you raised. When you talk about official policy or official news, I think that means that something that we have approved and is in the minutes would be the type of, if called upon by the press or anybody else to say, what is the county's official position on this item? That would be something that they would have every right, I think, to come to the chairman, whoever it might be, to say, this is our official position. You ask, and this is it. I don't think that this is intended to preclude you or anybody else from speaking as a commissioner about how you feel about the issue. You could say, I didn't vote for that, but that is the official position because it carried. The majority ruled that we would do X. But if some of your constituents say to you, how do you feel about it, Mr. Kelly, or even the paper or anybody else, it's free country. You can say whatever you want to. But this just simply tries to provide a guideline so that whatever, I think the key word here is official. The official position of the board is the following, and that is what is approved by the board, and as far as I'm concerned, in no other way should it be represented. It has to be what this body has approved publicly, and then that could be represented to the paper, for instance, as this is our official position. So I hope that
I
clarifies.
just don't know it's that clear in here.
Yeah.
Well, that goes without saying. Once the board takes an official position on any subject matter, that's a given. But in regards to what he's speaking of, the board doesn't, and if that's what you're trying to get out of this, then certainly I won't be supporting it. But if you're trying to suggest, or if you are suggesting that there needs to be clearance from the board to speak or to address an issue that may be raised by the public or by the media, then no, the board doesn't have that right. Don't have that right, and shouldn't be trying to impose it in any kind of legislation. You know, quite frankly, it would seem to me that even those of us who are elected by the district have a duty and responsibility to represent all the people of the county. It's just how you were elected is what the districts represent. And again, had fairness been above board all along, then perhaps the district would not have been necessary, but it became necessary. And as a result, that's how we choose to elect people from various parts of the county. But as far as duty and responsibility, we owe it to each citizen here in the county to represent them to the fullest.
Without question. If you look into all of this document, there's a lot to it. And you see here about the open records request for information. And so, you know, only a sort of small part this is a sticking point I can see for some, but it's not intended to be, and it can be changed. It can be modified. This is something it's a working document, really. And I felt like that it would be useful to you to have a better understanding, and employees eventually to be able to understand what our guidelines are for public expression to the media primarily. And of course it goes in and says most things the county manager or his designee should be consulted with, and review materials that may be released or given out on issues of this nature, talking about priority or emergency types of communications. But it's not intended to confuse, but there's a lot here. If you would like for us to, we could pass it, we could take it under advisement. It needed to be introduced so that we could begin to grapple with it and talk about its usefulness or lack thereof. So, any other comments?
I didn't see, I mean, you make a good point, Commissioner Kelly, but what I really saw in this was expectations and guidelines internally. Because it'd be very easy for somebody, you know, if they didn't have guidelines and be trained on what this is, to inadvertently give out sensitive information, I don't know, was that not?
I'm fine with internal, I'm just,
That's part of it, and I think another part of it is to also communicate to the employees that any official communication of the board needs to go through the chairman, especially in times of emergency. So, you know, it's just that.
Rather than from a staff.
And we get calls, you know, quite often, and it involves, we don't want to be put in a position where we're contradicting board policy. So, you know, sometimes, especially on a vote that's taken by the board or something like that, you know, response should be made by the chairman and not staff.
Mr. Chairman.
So that's the intent. I don't think there was anything else.
Table this, the next meeting, give everyone a chance to tweak, do what they feel like on the wording, get it where it suits everyone.
All right, is this your final draft?
No, not at all. This,
Waiting on comment.
in fact, we are waiting. This is not even there for a vote, but the motion to table it and to study it some more is valid. And if that pleases the board, we've lost very little, except maybe coming up with a better document. I'd like to ask for a vote then. All in favor of tabling this and working it over according to the comments that have been made here today, indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Then that is the way it is ordered. Thank you very much. Now
let me ask you this.
Yes, sir.
Did we have a problem or did we have a problem?
No, sir. We're trying to prevent one. We're trying to do prevention.
No, there's no secret code here. I'm sure.
They call it risk management?
I think I could be very comfortable with this document if you took out the county commissioner on it.
Okay.
I mean,
I'd like to ask the manager, Mr. Crumpton, to sort of
I'll
doctor it up a little bit.
With
Work it out. So
the help from Miss Lee.
Oh, you needed an eraser. You needed a doctor.
Okay. Now, speaking of the county manager, Mr. Crumpton, I think it's time to hear from him and his comments.
I'm passing down a report, the wrong dates at the top, but it's the most recent report on the number of positions that have opened since our freeze was put into place, and you can see the list is getting pretty long, and you know, we're starting to see some issues, and especially social services with some of the positions opening. So just wanted to bring your attention to that. We haven't put a pencil to find out how much money this is saving the county yet. We will soon. And then on the attachment I just sent out, the next 3 pages was an email that was sent out comparing the hiring freezes that these counties that are in here that responded. You can see that we're not the only one that's doing this, and actually got some more listserv stuff today that shows that some counties have even been a little bit more drastic, have gone ahead and done RIFs to get things in place by July 1st.
could you explain to people that might not know what a RIF is, what that is?
Well, I was getting ready to get to that.
Okay.
Reduction in force, and that's eliminating positions at the budget. And at this time, it's not anything we're doing official, but we start budget negotiations next week. And then on page 42, it's probably the fastest way to go through where we stand right now. But at the last department head meeting, department heads asked me to give them my best guess of how short we were going to be next year in our budget, and assuming a zero increase budget, we would end up $2.7 million short. So total gap in 09-10 would equal 6%. We'd have to cut the budget, the $62 million budget that we're working through right now, by 6%, and that's county appropriations. And we remember that out of that 62 million, 45 million are actually county dollars that we control and would actually have an effect on that. So at that department head meeting, I just went ahead and told them they were wasting their time asking for new positions. Asked also, you know, unless they could develop a new program that was going to eliminate positions or improve productivity, there'd be no new programs. We were not going to consider reclasses. We would consider new capital only if it kept operational expenses down or improves productivity. And then I had them start thinking about developing plans for 2%, 4%, and 6% reductions with a, and you'll recall that I sent a memo to y'all a few months ago, and we looked at 0, 2, and 4 plans. So you can see it's creeping down as we're going further along, and you know, as we look at the revenues continue to get worse. We haven't hit the bottom. You know, we hoped we were trending to a point where things would stop, and you know, at least they wouldn't keep going down, but they continue to go down. Register of deeds revenues will probably be another $100,000 short above what I told you before. And we predicted that sales taxes would be off a little over $500,000. And I know we weren't supposed to do projections off of November, but if we did, we'd be almost $1 million short for the year. So the numbers grow, and then we have the pressure, which we knew would come from the state. You know, whether there would be a push down to us and whether we'd have to cover that too. This $2.7 million does not include anything that the state might take or might do. So things are getting worse, not better. And as we go through the budget process the next 2 weeks with the department heads, they're going to have to come up with some serious reduction plans. It's a whole different thing going through.
So
budget this year.
This shrinks the budget for next year by, I mean, we're going to be looking at a what, $59 million budget as opposed to a 62. I mean,
it'll be 58 and
58.
It's like we gotta cut 3.8 million out.
That's about right. You've got, when you look at it, if the state takes the full $600,000 in ADM money, I mean that's in what we'll be all right if they don't take the lottery, you know, because we can convert that money over to debt service from the lottery. Most of our debt now is the 2004 and 2006 COPS. The courthouse is paid off this year. At least we own the courthouse free and clear this year now that we're about to outgrow it. So
Get a whole equity line.
that's right, we're going to refinance it now, add on. But, you know, we're not going to be doing any refinancing right now. But the gap grows, and, you know, we don't have a lot of fund balance to play with under our policies. We may have to look at falling below our policies for a little while to make it through the next couple of years. But even then, that's a bad thing, because that low end of our fund balance really is to keep us cash free, so we can keep moving, you know, and keep paying bills. If we go below that 14%, we have problems paying some bills in August and September.
And that takes care of what, 2 months worth of expenditure effectively. I think people need to know that you couldn't expect an organization, government this large, not to have a reserve to take care of itself in an emergency.
With the way we bill taxes, you know, July and August, you know, you're using most of your fund balance to keep going until you start getting paid in September for your taxes. So, but this is obviously an issue that we're going to discuss at the retreat, and hope to have a little bit fuller presentation for you on the projections that the departments are making, because they've done a lot of cuts already in their budgets this year, and I'm anxious to see what they're projecting to spend for the rest of the year over the next couple of weeks, and see how that compares with where we are, because it's going to have a big bearing on where we go. Mr. Chairman, that was really the only thing I was going to talk about.
Comments, questions?
Yeah, could I, do you think that the 2% reduction development plan is sort of moot now, and maybe should move to a 4, 6, and 8?
That's where we're headed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know that 2 is relevant.
We were going to wait for December's sales tax revenues.
And when will that come in?
About March 10th. Okay. March 10th, be next week. And about the time we sit down and talk with our first folks about their budgets, we'll know where sales tax are, and we'll know whether we need them to look at an additional 2%. And a lot has to do with, you know, when you look at where we can cut and where our money is spent. You know, we have $15.6 million going to the schools. And, you know, we've already told them they needed to look at 0, 2, and 4. I have not told them they needed to go look at 2, 4, and 6, because I wanted to see where things fell next week.
Well, this is public, and the word goes forward, you know, out as to what it is, so everybody needs to be aware. Did you say that you expected the December sales tax to be up a little bit, even in this tough time that you sensed it was going to bounce up?
We heard it was going to bounce a little up, and then, but the real surprise was that January would be up. So, you know, maybe things will rebound, and we did hit the bottom on sales tax in November, but we won't know for a couple months. That's what makes this so hard to project going forward. I mean, a lot of counties have already gone ahead and said, okay, here, this is what we're going to cut, and went on ahead and did it. And you know, we got a package from Union County today, and they've eliminated 117 positions already. And I don't think we were ready to go jump off the boat yet and start making a 10% reduction in headcount. I think we want to hold on as long as we can. At least that's what I've heard. So let the department heads try to figure out ways to handle their budget, and if not, then we'll have to come back to you and talk about those kind of things.
Well, I know that one of the largest areas of our budget is the continuing operating expense and funding those positions at the school that the state doesn't fund. So has the school been involved and aware that they may have to make some cuts to which they get county funding from also? You take a look, and other school districts across the state are doing this now, so.
Well, we met about a month ago with the leadership over there, and they wanted to know what we saw. And a month ago it was 0 to 4, leaning towards the 2% reduction, and told them there would be an outside chance at 4. So, you know, right now, you know, that's pretty big.
We haven't been asking them for any reductions yet.
No, we did not ask them for a reduction this year, and they said it's easier and better for them to make the reductions July 1st than to try to do it midterm. So we've been trying to hold off as long as we could, but at some point they've got to make plans for next year, and you know, we probably need to make our decisions in April, which will be a lot earlier than we normally make them on what we need to do, because everybody needs to make their plans.
Mr. Chairman, can I make one more?
Surely.
About a year, 2 years ago, year and a half ago, when I came on the board, there was a big push for this board to approve funding for Lee Senior, and you know, it never happened. And I just want to say, you know, I think that this board made a tough decision at that point in time, and looking back, hindsight, it was the right decision, because right now I think we would be in dire straits if we would have approved a $25 million project. And you're looking at Roanoke Rapids right now with their Randy Parton Theater and what they're going through. You know, I'm just saying, you know, history begets the future, and I just want people to realize that, you know, tough decisions come at a price sometimes, and I think the right decision was made at that point in time. And it took a lot to make that decision from people on this board and people not on here. But you know, it's something we need to keep in our mind going forward too.
Okay, thank you.
I think, talking about that, I think it's a real possibility that at least one of the phases of out the high school is going to be eligible for some of the stimulus money and also the stimulus loans. You know, you're not looking at 25 million, you're probably looking around 8, 9 million. And you know, the board's going to have to make a tough decision if we qualify for that loan about whether we're going to borrow that money at no interest. Because eventually we're going to have to do that project. And do you want to borrow the money at 5.8%, or do you want to borrow it now at no interest? So it's going to be a tough call, and it's going to be how we can fit it all into the budget, whether we can do it or not.
Exactly, and I think that if that opportunity comes along, you and your staff will show us our options, you know, how that plays out downstream, because it's a pretty straightforward type consideration. We can do it, or we cannot, or what the level of risk involved is in this imperfect world in which we live. So
Davenport will be at our retreat, and that will be a good time to talk to them about that debt and how we could how we could fit it in to our debt structure and make it work. So I'm looking forward to March 20th and that discussion.
Yeah, we still really don't. Has anything else in the last several days materialized about what might be coming? I mean, I know that Superintendent Moss is shaking every bush probably looking for it, but do you know of anything that has been encouraging that we are going to get or stand eligible to get a certain amount?
Well, I think the fact that he sits on the committee that's going to allocate the school money is a big help for
that
them.
should help us.
We're trying to find out where we can find some folks on some other committees to help us. Our big grant that we're getting ready to apply for this week is the $2 million for the Sandley Dam project. We have a project that's almost shovel ready. The design is almost ready. As a matter of fact, March 16th, we're going to have the engineer here to make a presentation to the board about where we stand, and we're close to being able to put that out to bid. So the timing with that application could not be better, and I'm really hopeful that we'll get that $2 million and we won't have to go borrow $2 million somewhere to make that project happen.
Okay, as we wrap up before we go into a closed session, I wanted to take, before they pop out of here, the opportunity to just recognize Mr. Cowan, Bill Cowan, and his wife. I'm sure this all sounds familiar to you.
Well, if I could speak, I started out at the county commissioners meeting at 8 o'clock this morning, and I'm finishing my day at 1. So.
Well,
I asked him if he wanted to come up here and take his chair back.
Well, it's nice to see you.
Sir,
Well,
appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Shall we have wrap-up comments by the commissioners? Mr. P., how about you?
You stole my thunder. I was going to ask Mr. Cowan and his beautiful wife to stand up.
Well, that's still in order.
Yeah. Let us recognize you.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Pascal, anything else? That's it? All right, Mrs. Shook.
Couple things. I really am concerned. I went to my first social services board meeting right before I left for California, and I'm really concerned about what the increased caseload is going to do to that department. And I'd asked Brenda had a really good program. It was very educational, informative, and I had asked her because I had heard that, you know, the new welfare payments that were coming down, they've removed all the work requirements. So she wasn't aware of that. I said, well, I don't know whether that's fact or fiction. So I asked her to look into that. She says, I hope they're not removing the work requirements, because she said that's going to explode, you know, what we do here. So I'm very worried about the caseload there and what that's going to be meaning. The other thing on the my resolution that we tabled, it's my understanding that if I go to the EDC and the City of Sanford and the Chamber of Commerce and get their input on the wording, and then actually have a document that's jointly signed by all of those, am I on the right page there? To bring here to have it voted on?
I think you're moving in the right direction.
Okay.
I think the more inclusive this is, the better we're going to all be. And I mean, it could be quite almost maybe a unique experience, and we're small enough maybe to get that kind of cooperation together. I think that would be a real interesting challenge. And then, you know, at the end of the day, we still look at it and see how it is with no promises made, but I think that's kind of the spirit of what we were talking about. Let's get some other people into this and see what it looks like. Anything else?
That's it.
Mrs. Dowler.
Well, in talking about the resolution that Linda brought before us today, it always impresses me when we get a lot of community input. Phone calls and emails that I've gotten over the last few days, and the folks that showed up here today. And as we try to work through this resolution as a board, one thing that I'd like to encourage people to do is remember that there's only 7 of us up here, and we can pass resolution after resolution, but the power still remains with the people. So if you have a concern about this legislation that Ms. Shook's brought before the board, I think it's imperative, whichever side you're on, whether you're for the legislation or against it, to remember that you have senators and a congressman that you need to contact and let them know how you feel about the issue. And that's all I have to say.
Very well said.
Oh, yeah, well, one of the things that I think would be important as we have our retreat is to maybe not specifically address this resolution, but to talk about where we would like to go as a board as far as I said, reacting to federal and state legislation. You know, just what our policy might be and the direction we would take. Because there's going to be a lot of new things coming down the pipe, and are we going to react to each one, or where our line's going to be?
Mr. Reeves?
Whatever these two.
Sir?
I thought you were coming down.
Oh, okay.
Whatever
We'll do
these
that.
two.
I'll yield, Mr. Reed.
Why did you yield with me? I want you to speak your mind so I can hear it.
Already have.
Kelly?
I'm just more or less just really concerned about where our budget is going, not so much this year, but next year. And, you know, I think that, you know, county is in a very critical position. I think that we're going to have to make some tough decisions coming down the pipe. And I think people in Lee County need to understand that this is a lot of this is being, you know, it's coming down to the state and federal, and we're cutting as much as we can. And if you know, we're going to have to throw the chips where they fall is where they fall. But it's going to be a tough next year, and people need to realize how tough it's going to be. Cutting $3.8 million out of our budget is going to be more than just equipment and, you know, unfunded programs. It's not a pleasant thing when you start talking about head count, but if it keeps going the way it is, it's not a very nice solution.
You got to practice your surgical skills.
Mr. Reeves?
Two things. Where are we on the stimulus package? Where is it, I guess is what I'm asking. Or does anybody know?
Well, I'm assuming the governor has the money, and
No, the list that we have from here
Oh.
going somewhere.
it is what's happening with the money that's being divided. When it's divided and put in proper places, we're taking our list and our priorities with the city, EDC, Town of Broadway, and the airport authority, and trying to apply for those monies now. So, because it's moving quickly. Pardon?
Have we gotten anything together like we were talking about last?
The managers are talking about how to apply together, how to work it together.
So have we sent anything forward is what I'm asking? Try dipping into the
Not-
governor's office.
No, sir.
So, are there any plans to send anything forward? Dempsey Benton is probably going to be moving pretty quickly as he puts this thing together, and I'd like to know that we have something on the table up there before they start going to the table.
I'll be happy to send it to them.
Yeah, I think that that's
Okay.
wise. I looked on the system and just had a call. There's some cities in the state who've already submitted their list, and they're requesting the funding even before they get the first batch of money in here. So that's all I'll say about that.
All right.
The second one is, I think that we ought to send letters to the Board of Education and the CCCC trustees and anyone else that we're funding from the outside regarding this report that the manager gave today, so that everybody's on equal footing and knowing that we're not sitting here on some pile of money that we're just holding back. These are very serious times. They're going to get even more serious, and making tough decisions is just the front end of it. Surviving those decisions is the back end.
I'll be happy to send that.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, Mr. Crumpton, I really, I'm a little bit confused about that, the communication. It seems like we're on the precipice of trying to get that information forward, and I'm not trying to make this difficult for you, but it seems like there's still the two hands are not coming together quite yet, and what I think we need to know sooner than later, what How can we advance this? How can we get it? How can we, if other cities, other counties have data in Raleigh, if there's a catching mitt up there somewhere, do we hand deliver it? Do we take it? Do we know where to take it? It's sort of an enigma to me. I just don't.
It is, and I asked when we were up in Raleigh last week, and I went over to the Association of County Commissioners for the conference call, and they've been in contact with the governor's office and Mr. Benton, and they're trying to guide us as best as they can as well. So I think there's still a lot of confusion about how they're going to dole it out. I mean, you already hear that 70 projects have gotten funded. How did those 70 projects get funded by the governor? I mean, I don't know. We don't have one of those 70 projects that got funded. Neither does City of Sanford, neither does Town of Broadway. But obviously there was something already in the works there, and we're just trying to figure out how to get inside to get some attention.
Right. I know we don't have lobbyists and those offer themselves even to counties, and I mean, that's not where we're headed, but that is a fact also, isn't it? That there are people who know how to put the arm on these funds early on. I mean, it's a game.
You're a Wake County or a Mecklenburg County or a city of Raleigh or a city of Charlotte. Your lobbyists have already been in Dempsey's office probably, I'm assuming, but how we get in there, I don't know.
Well, this is not encouraging to think that it's a power game, but you know that in reality it probably is. Well, let's do everything we can and continue to see what we can do. In wrapping up, I had just three things I wanted to mention. Part of the study course that we went to this past week with the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners and led by the government for government, the School of Government from UNC, talked to us about a lot of things. It was very much worthwhile, especially for freshman commissioners, and very useful. One of the things that we talked about, and one of the things that sort of jumped in my head, was the need for goal setting. Goal setting as far as our budget goes, to sort of get into that. I know we have variations on that theme, but strategic planning over the next 5 years, for instance, how can we be proactive? And this is not the ideal time to maybe to put this in motion, but nevertheless, how can we look over the horizon? I think it goes to Mr. Kelly's point a bit about how we can be ahead of the curve, how we can be anticipating and not simply on a year-to-year basis sort of reacting, but acting ahead of time, so that insofar as the meaning of strategic planning is that we have a plan of where we want to be 5 years from now. Now, you may not be able to get there, but at least you have a vision of where it is we ought to be. And I made that note, and that would include the CIP report about maybe they can be looked at together, capital improvement projects. But we talked about that some, and I'd love to see that given a little bit of life. The second thing is board committee structure. One of the things that I thought about and wanted to just mention is that as we go forward, are there any committees that we need to consider among ourselves? Not those that we serve on in the community, but are there any that could take on task force responsibilities among us, so that we are alert, proactive, and involved in what's going on? And many counties have these, some have more, some have less, but I think that it's something that we need to talk about. And finally, the annual budget, which is coming up soon. I communicated to Mr. Crumpton that I really, really hope that it could be simplified in some magical way as we come into this. I think that we bring varying levels of understanding to the government budgetary process, but the most important thing is that it be, though the details and the graphs and the line items may be something that we have as backup. We need to, as we go into this process soon, we'll be into it in just a few weeks, that it be made manageable and understandable for all of us. If it's bigger letters, if it's budget for dummies, you name it, I'll take it. But whatever it is, I'd like to come out of that process thinking that not only did I act responsibly, but I really learned something about those things that you and Mrs. Minter and others have done all of your lifetimes and understand implicitly. And for people like us, like I say, some of us understand some and some of us understand less. And take us through it in a way that we can do the people's business in a most effective and efficient way. Having said that, and I think perhaps we have a motion.
I'd like to move we go into closed session to discuss a personnel matter per North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A6.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are, it is approved unanimously. We will go into closed session.